Our panelists today, Leigha Presley from Towson. She's a 7-year veteran. She was a graduate of the University at Arkansas State with a bachelor's in radio and television with an emphasis in sports. She adds, go Red Wolves. Now, she also has worked all across the country from the University at Idaho, Savannah State, Kent State, and now Towson University. She was selected to attend the Women in Football Forum with the NFL in 2019 and worked in the NFL East-West Shrine Bowl in 2020 as one of the female pipeline participants. Welcome, Leigha. Now, Alex and Knisley, did I get that right? Can you confirm? I tried to get that right. I wasn't super confident. Alex, did I get that right?
Yep, you got it right.
Fantastic. Alex Knisley joined the Kansas Jayhawks as Director of Football Video Operations in January of 2019 after spending the previous 2 seasons as the Assistant Director of Video Operations for the Northwestern football program with Darby, actually. Prior to her time at Northwestern, she held the position of video coordinator at both FIU and Eastern Michigan. She got her start at Georgia, where she was a student video assistant with the Bulldogs football program while earning her bachelor's degree in mass media arts. She has also represented the female contingent in the industry through various NFL programs, including the National Women's Forum and the 2019 East-West Shrine Game and the 2020 Senior Bowl. Okay. Welcome, Alex. And last but not least is Darby Dunnigan. She's been a 19-year veteran and our longest tenured veteran here. She joined Northwestern as the program's Director of Video Operations in July 2013 after a successful 6-year stint as video coordinator for the football program at the University of Memphis. She was elected president of CSVA on May 17th at its national conference in Milwaukee. She serves a 2-year term, being up for re-election in 2020, and she also has served as the vice president since 2014. In her role, she is responsible for the supervision of all video staff, coordinating filming and practice, providing every edited practice and opponent footage to the coaching staff. She also contributes to the football program's efforts in relation to shooting and editing post-production features on the players and specials events. And she's maintained similar responsibilities at Memphis and assisted in the online streaming of various athletic competitions and press conferences to the Tigers athletic website. She was named the Video Coordinator of the Year for Conference USA in 2010 to 11 and 2012 to 2013, and was the National Video Coordinator of the Year in 2013. A native of Rural Retreat, Virginia, she worked 2 years as a graduate assistant in the video department at Marshall prior to coming to Memphis. While at Marshall, she prepared and distributed weekly opponent exchange and film, and also supervised student assistants and assisted the video coordinator in day-to-day video operation. Now, she got her start at the University of Virginia while working on her bachelor's degree in anthropology and sociology. She was a student manager for the football team 2 seasons before switching to the video department. She worked in 3 years in video operations and earned her bachelor's degree in May 2005. And she has since stepped down from her position as president, but she will transition Errol, as we all know. And we're all honored to have you here, and we can't wait to hear what you have to say. And everybody will be presenting in the order that I mentioned in the bios. So Leigha, you'll be up first, and then Alex, and then Darby. Now, before we get started, does anybody have any questions for me? I think that's pretty clear. Okay. I'm going to allow multiple participants to share. And Leigha, you have the floor.
Hey, what's going on?
I'm just going to
let going well. How about you?
Head coach in the door, and I'll be right back.
Well, coaches they've been back there for a few weeks now.
Hey, everyone. This will be my first panel to speak on. I don't really know exactly how to start this off. Kind of thought he would go with Darby, being the veteran that she is. So I was not prepared to start.
I'll be honest, I don't know about Alex, but I didn't prepare like any sort of presentation. I kind of just envisioned this more of like I jotted down some notes from what Jimmy had sent us, and then I want this to be more of an open conversation, like us sitting around hanging out talking, not a let me tell you how we did it and this is how you should do it type. Like everybody goes through different experiences. So I kind of envision more just seeing like a talk session instead of, I definitely don't have a PowerPoint, so I hope you guys don't.
Me neither.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk over bullet points. I know we were sent a few potential topics, but honestly, I feel like I can be more of aid to the group by you presenting an issue or a situation or something you have question on, and then me using my experience or where I've, where I've been in the past to help guide you on and the skill set that I would have or how I would approach that situation. As far as being a woman in the industry. So
yeah, I think we can all bounce off of each other on that. Just any questions you guys have, we each probably have a different experience or maybe similar, but definitely we'd love to hear what you guys want to know from us, the main thing.
Now I make a statement.
Yeah.
My name is Jevin Stone, Penn State football video director. I just wanted to say the reason why I jumped on here is Darby I kind of look at like a sister to me. I met her, 2012, 13. I had a position open, and I grew up with 9 women in my house. I have 5 sisters. I have the utmost respect for women, especially women in the field of where it's predominantly men. And to see, even Dory on here, I see Dory on here and Darby and Leigha and Alex, and just to see 4 women just shine in the industry just puts a smile on my heart. And any young lady that works in my office, I use you ladies as examples all the time, especially, no disrespect anyone else, but what Darby's done in this industry. I mean, just listen to her accolades. She was the president of the CSVA, and, she's helped me out with numerous things. I mean, I've even joked around with her and said, if I ever leave Penn State, my staff is hiring you. They already told me that. So I just wanted to say on behalf of just me and my family, like, I have the utmost respect, because it is difficult for women to work in this industry. It is a male-dominant, male-chauvinistic field that a lot of people do not understand what you ladies go through to provide for us, these players, these coaches. And I just absolutely respect the hell out of all you guys. I just had to say that.
Well, I appreciate that, Jevin. And you're right. Like, there's definitely differences that we go through in this industry that a lot of guys may not even think about or understand. So I know that you're more understanding than the big support my day wants. And I want to start by saying that the biggest piece of advice I give is get comfortable, be uncomfortable, right? Like, you're always more than likely you're going to be the only one in the room. Sorry, the audio is coming in my computer. That's weird. So get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? You're going to be the only one in the room, and that's going to be the norm, right? So get comfortable. Can you?
Sorry,
Jimmy?
you're like coming in and out. Like I heard you say you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, but it's kind of warbly. So
Okay, so I'm gonna go grab a pair of headphones, and Alex and Leigha, you're up.
say like that was way better. Whatever you just
you already sounded.
I didn't do anything, so it just does that a lot during Zoom calls. So I'm gonna go get a pair of headphones that'll fix that. I'll be back.
Just to jump off of that, I know Darby and I, having the luxury of working for Darby for 2 years, got to learn underneath her. And as Jevin mentioned, she's incredible in the way she's paved the way for other women in this industry. And so that's something, get comfortable being uncomfortable was something that she challenged me with every day. And feeding off of that, I think it's also important to put yourself in those situations, because the more you put yourself in those situations, the less uncomfortable they become. And then the more confident you are moving forward and going on to that next situation and handling that next piece of adversity. And that translates to all the topics that I know Jimmy had mentioned when he reached out to me. That goes for how you approach coaches, how you speak and work with them, how you effectively deal with the players, and even going in, and I don't see this being any different from women to female, but a lot of times, a lot of the challenges we're facing, I could go into a room and it could be a technical issue, and it's not like you see everything that's thrown at you. You're going to get different problems come up every day. And so I feel like that's good advice for anyone, not just women. You know, you're going to experience issues and problems and have to think on your feet and have a skill set that you can rely on and be confident in to feed off of when you go into that room and it's a staff meeting or it's team meeting and we have practice in 20 minutes and we need to get the install in. You got to be on your feet and you got to work quickly. So not just being a female and handling those situations, but really sports in general and the high pressure environment we're in, that's great advice to me and something to instill in your everyday workflow.
So I'm getting questions in from our participants. And right now, the first question that I thought was really interesting for you guys to answer was, why do you all think that there are so few women in the industry? And what can we do to encourage more participation? What are your feelings on this? All of your feelings on this. Go ahead.
Hopefully you guys can hear me better right now. Thumbs up if you can. So awesome. Okay. So I think it's a double whammy, right? It's sports, it's tech, and those numbers are low with women in general. So I think part of it is just the industry in general. And I think another one is, it's definitely, I mean, if I'm going to be blunt, a lot of this stuff I'm going to say is I'm a huge feminist, do not get me wrong, but a lot of the stuff that you're going to hear me say is very anti-feminist. And I think part of the thing is that it's very, very difficult to have a family and do this job at the same time. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to tell you that it's not going to be, you know what I mean? And I don't even have a family. And I could see how that could be difficult. So I definitely think that plays a lot into the number of women in this job and really in a lot of jobs overall, but definitely in this job in particular because of the hours and the requirements of the job.
I think from a student perspective too, Darby, it was really interesting working under you because the 2 years I was there, we had more female students on staff than we did males. And I think it worked out because of word of mouth almost. Like a lot of how you get your students is they want to work with people who they're going to get along with, who they're going to have a good culture with, because even as a student, you're spending a ton of time in the office during the season. And so like everybody in the industry knows how important that culture in the office is. And I think people recruit people like them. And I feel like it's very interesting that, you know, once you get one female in as a student, I feel like you'll gather more because that culture opens up and they can see that they can relate to the females and they can get the job done with them and that it's not so different. But I feel like it's hard for that one person to break in and then open that up to everybody.
I think it's really, really, really important to have that network around you to see that you're not the only one, that there are others in the industry that are like you, that you know, that there are others who are going through what you've gone through or that you can turn to and ask the questions to. You know what I mean? I think anytime that you look around and see others like yourself, it's easier to imagine yourself in those positions. And
I've had some video coordinators and coaches since I'm on the Dragonfly side now of things, and I talk to a lot of FCS coaches and DFOs who have to run their video program. I've had a lot of surprising conversations with people where they said they've had more success with female students and female assistants than they have with males. And I don't know if it has what exactly that leads to, but I've had a good number of people say to me, I'd rather hire women to do video than to hire boys or guys, whether it's an attention issue, whether it's you're trying to just make sure you get the job done because you want to make sure you're not setting a bad precedent for other women or yourself. I've got a lot of positive feedback on people in wanting to hire women over any other alternative.
And I think it goes back to what Alex said. Once staffs get comfortable with having females on staff, it makes it easier to bring others in, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? I think every staff that I've ever been on, when I was the first female on staff, it was definitely a learning curve for them. Not so much for me, but definitely a learning curve for them. And I think one of the funniest things is that they feel like they have to watch what they say. And that's a lot of just normal not with like the crude jokes. That's another point I want to make, but like just with the cursing, you know what I mean? I remember being in my first or second staff meeting at Northwestern with Coach Fitz, and he dropped the F-bomb, and he kept turning around and he would say, sorry, Darby. And at one point I was like, all right, that sorry covers the rest of my career here. Like you don't need to apologize for cursing in front of me. And I think it's really, really important to get used to, first of all, if you can't deal with the language and you can't deal with the crudeness of men, no offense to all the guys on this call, but if you can't deal with the crudeness of men when they get in groups and their jokes and things like that, then you really maybe should look at another area to be in, right? I think that's part of fitting in, and that's one of the difficult things about being a female in an all-male staff is that inherent bonding, like going out and grabbing a beer or playing noon basketball or just working out playing golf. You know what I mean? Like those small things that guys like, you get a new guy in the office, they're like, hey man, come out and grab a beer. They don't really think to do that with females. And I think there's a couple of different reasons for that. Be it that, you know, if they have a female in their life, then you're not exactly, it doesn't look good to invite other females out to have drinks with and things like that. So there's a lot of dynamics that go into the inner office bonding but being able to handle the language and being able to handle those jokes is part of fitting in. Now, with that being said, there is 100% a line, right? And once that line is crossed, there needs to be actions, okay? So there's a difference between a crude joke and a inappropriate joke directed at you, right? There's a difference between a pat on the back and a brush against your boob as they're walking by, right? So there are lines, and those lines cannot be crossed. But those lines I feel are somewhat different in football than it is in a company with regards to the language and the jokes, not with regards to sexual harassment. That line is a line. Let me just set that straight. But there's plenty of times that the jokes that are the things that we talk about in our office, you would be fired for at a normal job, right? You know what I mean? Just because it's so black and white with HR and what is socially allowable and socially not. And it's a little bit different in football.
And I find it interesting too, because I feel like as a female, you need to be careful where your line is, because your line might be different than the woman that comes behind you's line. And so just because I'm comfortable in a situation or with a joke or with something that said, you know, Kansas is actually very open. We have 6 other females on staff within recruiting, our operations, our athletic training. And so like a joke that I may say in staff meeting is probably okay with me as a female. It may not be okay to our director of on-campus recruiting. So I think you also need to be aware that, you know, for a long time, women were so limited in this industry that you were the only one at the table, but we're trying to change that now. And part of that is making it easier for everyone else to join the table and come in, and you need to think of the other women that are going to come behind you. And so just because you're comfortable with a situation or you're willing to let it slide, you need to think about the precedent that you're setting for everybody else coming after you as well.
Yeah, I'd agree with everything that Darby and Alex says. Another thing I think that maybe some females have an issue with is you have to not be intimidated by these men. You're going to be in a room in a staff meeting with 10 to 20 men, and you're probably going to be the only female there sitting at the table, and you've got to be stern. You've got to know what you're talking about, or at least act like you know what you're talking about. Like, you have to have authority behind you, or you're not going to get the respect that you want. You know, it's a learning curve too. It's great, especially if you've been an assistant first and you get to kind of sit back and watch things. I got lucky enough that my boss in college was one of the only women at the time. Liz is no longer in the business, but it was great to watch her and see how she interacted with people, what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do with my students as far as, things. But that's with any, boss. But it was great having a strong female and seeing how she interacted and how she stood up for herself. And then that just encouraged me to do the same as I went on. But yeah, you really have to be comfortable with being in a room with a bunch of men and just knowing that you know what you're talking about. And then, because if you act like you don't know what you're talking about, they're not going to trust you to know what you're talking about. So.
And even if it's an act, just portray that confidence and then go back and be like, oh shit, now I got to figure this out. Right. You know what I mean? But the biggest thing is confidence. And I think that's one of the hardest things that women struggle with. And when you're the only female in a room, it's hard to be the one to speak up. Right. But you have to do it. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. But you, like Leigha said, you have to know that knowledge. You have to be confident in what you're saying. Because if you're not, and they start to doubt you, then you start to lose that power and that respect.
Okay. Bouncing off of that, interesting question we have here is that what stories about any adversities that you have faced, uncomfortableness, or insecurities that you have fought throughout your careers? Now, it says trigger warning. So I think that just means we have to be careful about the uncomfortable content. So go ahead.
I feel like that's so broad. Like every day is different. I noticed there was something like a similar question you had sent of dealing with players. And that is something that was, especially coming straight out of college, like my Eastern Michigan and FIU years, when you're closer in age to them, it's a lot, in my opinion, it was more difficult to handle like their requests or when they needed help. And I think it goes back to the same way that you carry yourself around those coaches and you present yourself to them is the way you need to carry yourself around the players and present yourself to them as well, which was a learning curve for me because it's hard when, like, okay, Eastern Michigan, I'm 22 years old and I'm sitting at a table and I can't relate to any of those guys. But then I go out to practice and they're like just a year or two younger than me and I can relate to them on a much easier level. You still have to create that professional setting and boundary. So that would be my advice. The biggest adversity I see female students facing is how to hold that professionalism around players, because you're being judged so much more harshly around them than the male athletic trainer or the male equipment guy. Like, even if you say you have class with a guy and you're talking about the homework that you need to submit right before you go out to practice, that interaction is going to be judged differently than the male manager having that conversation before practice. And you just need to be aware of who you're around, who's watching, who your network is. And it sucks because it's a double standard, but you know, we know that double standard exists, so spin it and use it to your advantage, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And I would also say that if you are having problems with players, do not be afraid to go to their coach or go, if you're a student, go to your boss. You know what I mean? Like, you have to nip it in the butt immediately, because as soon as you just look past it, then they start pushing and go to the next one. And then he sees that he's doing it. And then so he thinks he can do it, right? Like, you literally have to nip it in the butt right away. And if that means that you are going to the coach and he doesn't listen to you, go to another coach. That coach doesn't listen to you, go to another one. Find somebody that's going to listen to you if you know that it's wrong. Because plain and simple, they wouldn't want their daughters or their sisters or their cousins treated like that. Why is it okay for you to be treated like that and you work on their staff for them every single day? And same thing goes for coaches. And the moment you use your sexual identity, or the moment they see you as a sexual object, is the moment that you lose any sort of professionalism in their eyes and any sort of respect and any sort of power. And that is blunt and it's truthful. Because if they're looking at you as somebody that they want to go out with, they're not looking at you as somebody who's coming in their office at a professional level to fix a major problem that they have in a time of stress.
Okay.
I think an interesting segue with that too, and Darby and I had talked about this a lot before, is clothing in the office. And unfortunately that kind of plays into it, because like, we all want to be able to express ourselves. And as a female, you know, I'm not going to wear the team issued sweatpants to work every day, because sometimes I have to remind myself I'm surrounded by men that I am a female and I want to get dressed up and I want to go to work. And but there's also a balance and a line, because you don't want to use clothing to draw attention to yourself either. So there's a very interesting balance, I feel like, of dress as a female within the office, especially because a lot of coaches will just show up in their sweats and travel suits every day. And, you know, if we do as a female, it's not necessarily as professional, but the more dressed up and the more glitzy you get, the more you're standing out and not fitting in as well at the table either. So I feel like it's a very hard balance, and that's something that I always am trying to work at, is to be that professional but still have my personal identity.
See, and I think Alex and I have talked about this before, as she mentioned. I'm old school, and I think that when I first started, I did everything I could to look like them so I stood out less. And I think it's more like, it was probably, 15 years in the business when I had enough female polos to get me through a full week of work. You know what I mean? Because I was always just getting issued guys stuff. But I felt like wearing that stuff and looking like them and not drawing that attention myself helped me fit in better. So that goes back to my unfeminist views. I feel like you should be able to do and say and act like you want. It doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is I did feel like it mattered back then. And I still do, to a point. Alex and I, we would have arguments about, should we let our female students wear yoga pants? I never talked about letting our female or our guy students wear yoga pants. You know what I mean? Like, those are just the conversations that we end up having to have with our students about.
And leggings, like they would be like equipment issued leggings, like from Under Armour. And it's like, I don't know. And it's hard, but you don't want to feel like you're telling a female how to dress and how to treat her body either. So it's a very interesting dynamic that I don't think there's ever a truly correct answer to.
The correct answer was when my head coach heard me talk about it, and he says, yoga pants, I don't care. And I said, all right, then they can wear yoga pants.
Okay, next question we have is, have you ever been put into an embarrassing situation like being kicked out of a meeting? If so, how did you approach it and overcome it?
I have. I am in team meetings all the time, you know, just for any reason. Spring ball, my first summer here, coach was going over some personal stuff he would say with the guys, and he basically wanted to go over how to interact with females, and he did not feel comfortable with me being there because he was basically saying that females will set you up for failure, and if you guys don't watch yourselves, then whatever. And I don't know if there was derogatory language. I didn't stick around to listen to it. Obviously, I was asked to leave, you know, out of respect. But yeah, I've definitely been asked to leave during uncomfortable situations where they wanted to just talk man to man.
See, at Northwestern, Fitz would have that same conversation, and he would come to me afterwards. He'd let me stay in the room, and he would actually bounce ideas and feedback off of me. Like, as a female, how do you think I handled that? Do you think I came across appropriately? So I feel like it's very interesting because our two experiences as females are different from staff to staff. So it's also going to be different everywhere you go to work. But a similar situation to Leigha, I have also been kicked out of a meeting when I was a student. At that point in time, we didn't have a full-time creative person, and I had made the hype video, and I was not allowed to stay in the room to play the hype video because the head coach's pump-up speech was beforehand, and he didn't feel comfortable cursing in front of me before they played the video. And I remember just being devastated because it was the first one I made, and I wanted to see how the team reacted. And, you know, that's a lot of feedback. When you put those time and effort into those videos, you want to see if you got out of it what you intended to. But in the moment, you don't fight it, you don't say no, you leave. But if it truly made you uncomfortable, if you feel like it's hindering from you doing your job and that you can't perform your duties with that mindset and view towards you, you definitely need to approach your head coach and sit down with them and express your levels of comfort and try to meet him halfway. Because I'm sure Leah's coach and my head coach at the time both thought they were doing it from a protection standpoint, and they thought it was in our best interest. And you just have to politely educate them that that is actually hindering us and keeping us from doing our job effectively.
It also might be how long you work with someone too. Again, that's when I first got there. That was the first, month or two that I've been working with this staff. So they don't know what's going to offend me, what's not. Like Darby said, every staff meeting, they would, if they cuss, they're like, we have a lady in the room. And I'm just like, okay, I can drop an F-bomb too. It's okay. Like, I'm completely fine with it. Like, I don't want to lose their respect, but I also don't want them to feel like they can't just speak freely. It's not going to offend me. Like Darby said, if it's something really crude, then obviously, yeah, I appreciate it when they say something like, hey, not really the place to say something like that, but, yeah, obviously I think it comes with time too and trust when it comes to having conversations and being asked to leave or stay or, whatever else. But if that coach has complete faith in you, I don't think he's going to ask you to leave or anything unless it's just something he believes like is the right thing to do. But I think if it would have been my second year here and he had that conversation, I don't think he would have been as like cautious about me being around.
Awesome.
I've never been asked to leave a meeting that I can remember. I know there's situations that I can't go into, like the locker room, pregame highlight tape, things like that. So I know that it innately there's like troubleshooting our locker room downstairs. I have to send somebody in ahead of time to check it out and make sure everybody's appropriate so I can go in and get the work done. You know what I mean? So there are situations like that where I have to be a little bit more understanding and just know that that's just the way it is. But I can't remember. I'm trying to think. I can't remember a time that I've ever been asked to leave a meeting. But it goes back to it's different with each staff. Northwestern handles it very differently than any other staff I've been a part of. Like Alex said, Fitz would come to us, ask us what our recommendations were. He would even use us as examples in those rooms. You know what I mean? I remember one time he was like, what if it was Darby drunk over in the corner needing help? Would you stand over and protect her? And I was like, okay, you didn't need to use me as an example. You know what I mean? But it helps, it helps the team relate to you as well. So goes back to your staffs, but I can't remember a time that I've ever been asked to leave.
On a different tangent, this question goes towards all of you. What was your NFL experience like? How was it? Et cetera, et cetera.
I only went to one conference, so I'm probably not the best. I think it's a really, really great networking tool. I think if you want to get in the industry or you want, and you're at a place where you can take internships, I think it's an awesome experience. But for me, it was more networking. When I went to the NFL Women's Conference, it wasn't the jobs that they were able to offer weren't really where I was at in my career. So I think it's really, really awesome for students, graduate assistants, recent interns.
I would agree from a women's forum perspective. It was very educational and interesting to meet those people, but I don't think it would help me get my next step in my career by any means. I will say the East-West Shrine Bowl, I worked that 2 years ago, and then the Senior Bowl, I worked that this past year. I went into that with an open mind, expecting the same thing, and I will say I learned so much to make me better at my job. Like any experience like that, I don't think you need to go in with a one-track mindset of, oh, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to meet these people and I'm going to get a job offer. Like, it's like, okay, what can I get out of this situation? And especially the Senior Bowl, I was brought in and integrated as part of the Detroit Lions staff. And Eric and Will were amazing guys to learn from and would take so much time and sit down with me and explain the differences between NFL and college or show you their workflow. So I think anytime you do an educational experience like that, go in with the mindset, okay, how is this going to better me now? Not what is this going to do for me? And every situation is going to better you and influence you in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. So we've all been to the forum, the same conference for the women, trying to, maybe breach into the NFL or whatever else. I actually got an interview out of that while I was there. And it just happened to be that the Redskins wanted to interview different people from the area. So I got to sit down with their owner, their video guy, their player personnel guy, and I got to have an interview like face-to-face with those guys, which you don't get a lot, especially with an owner of the team or something like that. Like, it was a great experience. Did I get a job out of it? No. But did I meet people and have like a huge, outlook for the future of what I needed to do or what I needed to work on or what they expect? Absolutely. That one in particular, it's hard because there's not very many females in the NFL right now that I know of. I know of a few assistants and that's it. So when we go to things like that, it's harder. We have to take out pieces of other jobs and apply them to us because they don't have a video representative there. And that's just the hard fact right now. That was the feedback I gave them. I said, I would have loved, even if it was like hearing from a male video staff member and having a breakout room for that. And then, them talking to us about what they would see a day in the job being like, something like that. The Shrine Bowl, kind of like Alex said, you go in thinking one thing and then you just go in and you get to learn so much more and you get to meet staffs and people from all over and different teams, and you're just really making connections. And it might not be for now, but later down the road you can call them and they'd be like, yeah, she worked for us, she helped us in our meeting rooms, she did this, she did that. For sure, I'd love to give her a shot. I remember her, and I can say that I shook enough hands and I face-to-face talked with enough coaches and video people that I feel like that definitely will help me along the line no matter what.
And backing off of that, like something I know they bring up at all the women's forum, and Leigha and I were at the same one, is they say every day is a job interview there. And that really stuck with me. And anytime you're given an opportunity to go do an internship or to go work at something like East West or the Senior Bowl, remember that those guys are watching you and they're observing you. And even if that organization doesn't have a job open at the time, people remember your work ethic and everything you do on a day-to-day basis. And if you keep that mentality, things will work out for you in the long run.
And don't pass those job opportunities up because you're scared or you're afraid you're not going to do good or you're going to fail. Like, it doesn't matter if you fail, but you went and you tried and you learned, right? And you're going to fail even more if you sit at home and not take that chance, right? So please, if you're given those opportunities, even if you're getting on the flight and you're like, oh my gosh, am I cut out for this? Yes, you are. You're there for a reason. Have the confidence, go do it, and learn what you can in all those situations. Don't say no to opportunities.
Another thing, we were talking about internships and stuff earlier, like apply for all of those. I'd say, especially if NFL is what you think that you want to do, make sure that you guys are doing those internships because those turn into jobs, and like you might not even be stuck in college football at first. You might get an NFL job straight out of college. Like I know a bunch of guys that went and interned during college and stuff, they got jobs. One of my students from Idaho, when I was first there, of course, she was still in college a couple of years, but she's working with the Arizona Cardinals now. She interned with the Colts. She interned with the Cardinals. And then she actually went and worked for DV Sport for 2 years as a support person. Cardinals had a job open up. She got it. So definitely apply for all of those things. Or even if you don't want to do NFL, it's still great to have that on your resume that you worked with an NFL team. Don't be afraid to apply for it. The big thing is like they're always looking for minorities too. So that's a good, stamp for you is that you are a minority and there's not a lot of women in this business. So you have a really good shot at getting these internships.
I completely agree with Leigha, and something I wish I knew earlier.
Absolutely.
Those NFL jobs are, like Leigha saying, are so hard to come by that you have to get in early and you have to work your way up the ladder. And that's just one of the unfortunate pieces about the NFL. And I wish I had known earlier in my career if I had been interested in the NFL or not, because you got to start at that internship level and you have to work your way up. So if you don't know if you're interested or not, take that risk, take that chance on that internship, and then at least okay, is this something I want to pursue? Am I willing to put in the long years to work my way up the ladder in these organizations? Or do I prefer college and the different aspects of that? But at least you've exposed yourself early, and you haven't pigeonholed yourself to, okay, like for me as a director at a Power 5 school, I'm not going to go back and take an internship. The type of job that I would take in the NFL is few and far between, and honestly it would be hard to pull me away from Kansas. So expose yourself to as much as you can early, so you know what your passions are and what you want your ideal career track to be.
Or so you know what it's not. I know Ashley Kors is on this call right now. She's going to be mad that her cheeks are turning red already, probably. But so Ashley is our assistant director of operations, and she got a position, an internship with the NFL this year, and kind of learned that maybe it wasn't exactly what she wanted, and what in college is more her speed. So it's just as important to learn what you like as it is what you don't like. So don't pass up those opportunities.
My cheeks are definitely red, Darby.
Do you want to talk real quick about kind of going in the NFL as an intern, especially as a female?
Yeah, so I got an opportunity to interview at the Women's Forum. Mine was a little bit different because I had known the DFO at the Buffalo Bills for about a year. I kept in touch with him. And so when I interviewed at, I'm sorry, hold on one second.
Ashley's hosting all of our, so we have Zoom calls all afternoon with our coaches and staff, and we have recruits this week too. So she's probably playing host to that call right now.
I am. I'm sorry. That's like the most nerve-wracking 10 seconds when someone jumps on and you have to figure out what room they came from and then put them in the right room. So I interviewed with the Bills at the Forum and went through the whole process, and they asked to bring me on for training camp. I was one of 6 interns for training camp, and you never know. They ended up asking me to stay on for the season. Regardless of, wanting to work in the NFL, not wanting to work in the NFL, it was an incredible experience. I mean, like Leigha and Alex and Darby have said, just to get to know these people, to build your network, to continue to learn and grow and see what that next level is like was incredible. So if you get an opportunity to do it. I grew up in college football. I like college football. You get opportunities at this level too, and just take everything that you can.
I'd say another thing is if you do get an interview with a team and you don't get that job, still take that as a great opportunity. I can't tell you, I've interviewed with multiple teams. I've still not gotten a job yet, but let me tell you that I made connections with those people that I interviewed with. They liked how I came across, or they liked this or that, but maybe there was just someone who had more experience than I did, or they were looking for something different at the time, or, whatever it was. But I feel like just always take that as an opportunity, and don't take that as like a downfall if you don't get that job or position. Like, it was great that you got picked to go to that interview. Like, just always take everything as like a huge opportunity and a learning experience, because that's what it all is, for sure.
I have a comment. Don't be afraid to leave home. Your family, if they really love you and really care about you, they will find you. They will come visit, or you can find time to go meet up with them somewhere. You can show them new things. And if they don't, well, too bad. Just do your own thing. If you're happy doing this, or whatever path you take, make sure you're happy, because if you're happy, then hopefully people around you will be happy. And if they're not, too bad. Too bad.
If you're afraid,
too bad.
Look, if you're plain and simple, if you're afraid to leave home for this job, then you're pigeonholing yourself to 1 or 2 jobs that you're just praying and hoping opens up. You 100% have to be able to move around, get up and leave at the drop of a dime, and fit in real quick. You know what I mean? If you're sitting around waiting for that hometown job to open up, then I hope you have a plan B, C, and D.
Yeah.
I moved home to the University of Hawaii, and it was the worst nightmare, worst 4 years of my life, and I'm still in Hawaii, and it's not as great as everyone thinks it is. So all you like, oh, you're in Hawaii, I don't care, it sucks here, I want to die. So Hawaii's not anywhere else.
Yeah, be ready to move, and don't be afraid of being stuck somewhere, because I can tell you I moved to 5 states in 5 years, I think, or something like that, something crazy. There's always going to be somewhere else. If you don't enjoy the place you're at, You know, it's really going to depend on your staff too. If you've got a good staff, you know, that's going to make the world a difference wherever you're at. But if you don't feel like you're happy somewhere, don't be afraid to look for that next place that's going to fit for you, because that's what really matters in this job, is really having those people that support you in that job and still moving up. I mean, even if you're happy somewhere, you're still going to want to move up. We all do. But if you find that place that you're really comfortable at and, you know, that's your forever place, that's great too. But just, yeah, you can't want to stay in one place in this job. It's just probably not going to work out for you if that's what you want. We've all had to move. None of us are at home as far as I know right now. So.
And it's important to, like Dory is saying, surround yourself with people in your life that get that and support you and understand that, because this industry is a difficult one to work in, male or female. And finding people who understand the hours, the commitment, the moving, the just everything that goes into it. It's important to keep the people in your life that will support you in those endeavors. And when you're like, hey, I got to move, I have 3 days and then I have to start work, having somebody in your corner who gets that and understands it is very important. Whether it's parents, you know, significant other, friends from college, you know, find those people that you can call at the drop of a hat and have them talk you through your crazy move whirlwind of a job change.
Make friends here too. That's what I'm going to tell you. You know, make friends with the video people. You're going to anyways, especially if you stay in this business. You're going to have tons of friends across the country. You'll find your best friend. Dory is my best friend. You know, I call her, you know, once, twice a week, 6-hour time difference, you know, 2 a.m, 2-hour phone calls. You know, sometimes you need that, and you're going to need someone who understands this job, you know. I'd say, like, reach out to any of us at any time. We don't care. We've been there. We've done that. A situation that you've had, we've probably handled. And it might be different for each one, but I feel like if anyone reached out to me and asked me, you know, for a favor or, you know, advice or anything, you know, we're always willing to talk to anybody. Like, we support all of you. Anyone trying to get into this business, it's a rough business. You know, it doesn't matter if you're female, male, whatever. Just, you know, rely on people and find people that you can talk to, and that's really going to help you out, is having people that understand, like, where you're at, what you're going through.
And if they don't understand, then they need to be cut out of your life, because they're only making you stressed out more, right? Like, when are you going to be home, or why can't you do this weekend, or you're always gone. Those little comments, like, pick away at your self-confidence of doing your job. So if they are not supportive of your career, then that means they're not supportive of you, and then they don't deserve your attention.
So for the next question, I'm going to ask for a brave soul to try to ask an in-person one. Does anybody want to speak their question loud and proud before I continue with the chat ones?
I do have a question. I'm Janae from University of Buffalo. It's kind of a two-part question. How have you built up your, like, workplace confidence, and also how do you introduce yourself when you're, like, at a conference or job interview or anything like that?
I think building up your confidence just take that step and do it, and then take the next step and do it, and then take the next step, and then you realize it's not that bad, right? So the more that you just push yourself to get out of that comfort zone, the more confidence that you can build, because you've been in there. You've seen how, you know how you can handle that situation because you've done it before. So the confidence is built when you go into that. So a lot of it is just putting yourself out there and doing it. And then it's okay, knowing it's okay to fail. Like, I think one of the things, if you haven't read this book, read Brave Not Bold, or what is it? Brave Not Perfect. Okay. So girls are taught from a very, very young age to be quiet and be perfect, where guys are taught to be brave and go out and do it. And just go out and do it, and that's where you get that confidence from. And it's scary as hell. I get it. Like, I get that that's a cliche thing to say, but, like, that's really what it takes, is just to get out and just step into that uncomfortableness and get it done. And then you feel better about it the next time, and then you're like, oh, I did that, then I could do this. Well, then this is no big deal. And then next thing you know, it's like the things that used to stress me out 10 years ago, I laugh at now. You know what I mean? And what I used to worry about then, and it comes with practice, but you have to push yourself out of that comfort zone.
Yeah, I say, you know, in the same thing, you know, it's going to take being in those situations, but sit up straight, project your voice, shake someone's hand, introduce yourself and don't wait for them to come to you. You go to them, and that's going to show a lot of, tenacity in you. And then that's what they're going to remember is, that, oh, they approached me, they have confidence and all this stuff. Like, and you may not, you may be scared to death to go up and talk to somebody. I tell you, I'm nervous every time I go up to someone I've not met before. I have a lot of anxiety all the time. Even speaking on a group call like this, I get a little shaky. And it's just, we're on screens and we're just talking and we're all being, honest and stuff. But you got to project like, what you're doing and that you are confident. And it's all about, like what you said before, even if you're not, act it out. They don't know it, and just remember, like, you're great. You know what you're doing. And even if you don't, you're going to figure it out anyways. We all got to figure it out. Like, and just, you got to learn how to, if it's something you don't know, you just got to buy yourself time. Like, hey, yeah, I'm working on it. Don't worry about it. I'll get it done. Just make sure you're not saying, I don't know. Say, I'm figuring it out. That's all it takes.
I think, too, the adversity that you will face as a female and building that confidence will actually make you better than some of your counterparts in the long run, because you're used to those situations and you have been forced to develop that confidence and that base knowledge of what gets you through your day. Like, Coach Miles, in my opinion, is not the most fiery coach I've been around, but he can, he's a head coach. He can be intimidating. He's well known. The first couple weeks in the office, people were shocked that I was comfortable walking right up to him and asking him, hey, what do you need from me? What are we doing for practice? Getting these plans. But he developed that respect for me faster by doing that and being open with him and approaching him, because I was doing what was necessary to get the job done. I wasn't worried about how he or the other coaches were perceiving me as a person. I was worried about how they were perceiving me as a video coordinator. So I did what I needed to get done to get the job done. And they will appreciate that, and it'll do leaps and bounds for you.
Yeah, and you might not hear that appreciation at first. It might take time. Like Alex said, people can be intimidated by people. I know my first year, straight out of college, I was an assistant. And my boss would send me down to my head coach's office to see if he needed anything. He pushed me to get out of my comfort zone. Coach Petrino was not an approachable person whatsoever. You would think that he was crazy. He could yell, scream, kick, punch walls, all sorts of stuff. It was intimidating. But I stood up, I walked down there. I approached him with confidence. If he needed something, I made sure I could get it done or I could find somebody that could. And by the time I left there, he gave me one of the greatest compliments ever. He said, Leigha, I just want you to know that I'm really thankful for everything that you do and you're really good at your job. And that was all I needed. Like, that stamp, you might not hear it till you're leaving out the door, but they do appreciate it, but you just might not always hear it. And you got to know that, you're not, it's a thankless job no matter who you are or where you're at.
If you're not getting told you're screwing up, that's their way of saying thank you. Yeah. So get used to also not hearing thank you. It's okay. You'll know if you're not doing a good job, right? Yeah. Like, don't question it. It's widely known. And Janae, to go back to your question about how do you introduce yourself, I will give you this one piece of advice. Make sure you have a strong handshake. I know that sounds silly, but don't go like the little girly, like pinching of the fingers handshake. That doesn't work, right? Like, one of the things I remember being like 7 years old and my father literally teaching me how to have a good handshake. And when you go in and you go in with a firm grasp and you look them in the eye and you have that strong handshake, that sets an immediate first impression right there. First impression, strong handshake. That's a difference of that's impressive. You know what I mean? And it sounds silly, but it's so very true. And
maybe a confident handshake. A confident handshake.
Right. I was going to say, introduce yourself with confidence. Not like, my name's Janae. Not that you did that, but like, my name's Janae. I'm from Buffalo. Hi, I'm Darby. I'm the director of video operations at Northwestern. It's great to meet you today. Even if I don't want to meet the person, just portray that happiness and that charisma and that confidence, and you trick people. I mean, seriously, if you just pretend that way, it's amazing. Like, that's what people absorb back. But if you portray that quiet meekness, that's what they pick up on.
Darby and
That'd be so nice.
Kill me right now, but we call it Walmart Darby. You need to be a Walmart greeter. You need to be happy and excited to see people and confident and overly chatty at first.
And then they walk out of your door and I go back to normal Darby, like, oh my God. But, oh, Coach, it's great to see you today. Of course, I'll get right on that. But it is. I turn into Walmart greeter Darby at the drop of a dime.
Yeah.
I meet everybody on the phone now, and one thing I've been doing is I'll go through and look at people's staff. So if I get a call from a school that I haven't made a connection with the point of contact video person or the DFO, I'll go through and look through their assistant coaches and be like, oh, I know that coach or I know that coach. And when I'm on the phone with that person, I'll say, hey, say hi to Coach whoever for me. Or I worked with, like I was on the phone with the Dartmouth guy, and I'm like, yeah, I worked for Buddy Tevens, so I don't want to hear anything about how great he is because he's hard to deal with. Or I know how hard he is to deal with, whatever. And sometimes that breaks the ice a little bit, and sometimes it doesn't, but it gives you a little bit of an in. Or yeah, say hi. What's her name? Janelle was on Mike Sanford's staff. Mike Sanford Jr., who's at Minnesota now as the offensive coordinator. When he was at Western Kentucky, I worked with Sandy at Stanford. So she and I were on the phone, and we were complaining and doing our normal Dory Janelle thing. And then he pops in and he gets on the phone and he's like, how's it going? And knowing him, he had the biggest smile on his face, and he was so excited that his two gal people he knew in the business were on the phone with each other. And he was so stoked, but I was still I'm like, oh God, hi Coach. I'm like, oh wait, it's Mike Sanford. I should be a little happier right now. But it's making those connections and just giving you that next level of introducing yourself. Like, oh, she knew so-and-so, or he knew so-and-so. And making that connection helps with people remembering you.
And that's something that we can do as a group to help each other, right? So like, Alex gets a job at Kansas. I know a coach that's going to Kansas. I text the coach and say, hey man, you're getting an awesome video coordinator. You know what I mean? So automatically she's got somebody that person knows vouching for her, which then makes it easier for that coach to approach her or give her credit in the office. You know what I mean? So like kind of pass it along, pay it forward, help a sister out. You know what I mean? Like give them validation. If you know somebody on their staff and they don't know them, or say, hey, Leigha, I just want to let you know, I know your coach, your O-line coach, he's an awesome guy. Tell him I said hi, ask him how his kids are, and then boom, you've got an in right there that's not just Leigha, the video coordinator. It's, oh, Leigha, the video coordinator who wants, who knows Darby, and now she's interested in my family. You know what I mean? This business is all about connections.
Do you usually go in with like a question when you're introducing yourself, just like as a conversation starter or anything like that?
I think it depends who we were meeting, where we were at.
Yeah.
That's just kind of we don't know exactly. So if I'm meeting Darby for the first time, hey, I'm Leigha. It's my first time at CSVA. I heard you're at Northwestern. Yeah. I've been there for, so many years or something like that. But yeah, if it's just someone like we just happen to be somewhere, it just takes an introduction and all that. Usually they're going to be like, oh, well, where are you from? Or how long have you been there? Or whatever. That conversation will come naturally.
And sometimes it takes an introduction, but I tell you what is memorable is following up on that introduction. A handwritten card. Hey, it was great to meet you at the CSVA event last week in Milwaukee. You know what I mean? I'd love to grab coffee if we're in town. Never start off with, can I get this from you? Or can you help me in this way? It's all about, hey, I just want to introduce myself. This is me. Follow up saying, it's nice to meet you. Keep your name in their mind. You know what I mean? If you're in Chicago, hey, I met you at the NFL Women's Conference a couple years ago. I'm in your town. Do you have time to grab a cup of coffee? You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to be honest. I'm an introvert. I don't like meeting new people. I don't like talking to new people. But when I'm in cities and doing those things, I'll reach out just to build those network connections, because that person could help me get to there and could get me to there. So that's another thing, pushing myself confidence-wise to go out and talk to these news people. You know what I mean? So don't pass up on those opportunities. And yeah, I kind of lost my train of thought there a little bit, but
let me just say how small the football world is. So I was at Old Dominion in 2011. They were FCS at the time in the CAA. Leigha just got the offensive coordinator, Brian Scott, and he was the OC there. He's her O-line coach now. So I said, hey, tell Bro I said hi. He probably doesn't remember me, but just throw that out there. And it took a minute, but he's like, oh, yeah, her. Yeah, okay. Oh, cool. And Jevin had a guy, Amon. He was a student. Do you remember Amon, Jev? Do you still have him?
He was our special teams quality control coach.
Right. This kid, like, was complaining about, we went to the playoffs, and this kid was complaining about breaking down, like, runs for the whole season of Georgia Southern that we had to play, blah, 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 blah. And now he's worked his way up, and is he at Memphis now? I don't know. But he's been around. And at some point, he actually sent me, a few times, he sent me a card like, how are you doing? Nice to see you at AFCA or whatever. Hope you're doing well. And that's it. And that's really classy of him. Now, he's still a pain in the ass, but he's worked his way up, and that he remembers and keeps up with those people that he knew from before, because maybe I might be able to help him out with something one day or whatever, or send an inappropriate picture of him in the office wearing a Christmas headband to a team for skits. That's always helpful.
Do your research going in those situations too. If you're going somewhere and you know you might run into somebody that you've been wanting to meet, hey, like, no, find something that connects you, whether you went to the same undergrad or you know somebody that knows somebody. Like, do a little bit of research goes a long way and breaking an icebreaker conversation.
Yeah, two things that Darby said that I want to point out. One, that one is a huge thing. If you get an interview with a school, a team, whatever, you should definitely do your homework. Look up those coaches, see where they've been. They might have been at Buffalo for all you know, before. And, you know, that's your connection and that's your in right there. You know, I always go in, look up the staffs, look up their bios, where they've been, what they've done, because once you get into this industry, you're going to know somebody who knows somebody. Like, I cross-reference them. Hey, this guy worked with my coach at Arkansas back in 2012 or something like that. So they know someone that I've worked with, so they can, you know, speak on, you know, later on about, he might not have been on my reference sheet, but I can say, oh, you know, Coach so-and-so, I worked with him back at Kent State. And they could call him and be like, hey, how was, you know, working with Leigha and all that stuff. The second thing that Darby said, and I think is super important, is that communication and taking the time and writing handwritten notes. Northwestern, Darby wrote me a handwritten note in 2017, wishing me luck on my season. All of my handwritten notes stay on my wall. That is a huge thing. I don't care who they're from. I've got 2 holiday cards from Devin. I've got all sorts of stuff. And I would say I think that's a big deal, and that's how people are going to remember you too, is when you make the effort. When I had those job interviews with the Redskins back last year, I wrote a handwritten note to everyone I met and thanked them for giving me the time of day to even meet with me at that point in time. I wrote to some of the panelists that we talked to and we met, like Katie, who works for the 49ers and went to the Super Bowl this year. I wrote them and said, thanks for, you know, being who you are, talking to us, being authentic. You know, it's just little things. You don't even have to have like a personal relationship, but if you met them and they touched you in some way, write them a note, because they're going to keep that. They're going to remember that. And it's a huge thing.
And just something to point out, like, you're never too big or too small to make a gesture like that. Like from Leigha's example, the 2 people on this call who have the longest tenure, most experienced video coordinators, and 2 people I highly respect, Jevin and Darby, are the 2 people who she has cards from. Like, you're never too good to reach out and make that effort and reach out to people. So whatever level you're at, remember that and keep your network going and take care of each other. And that's something that this video industry is really big on, is taking care of each other and helping each other out.
And there are so many applicants and so few jobs. You have to do something to set yourself apart. Those handwritten notes, it's just that little thing that makes you memorable. So when your resume is in that stack of papers with 50 others, oh, Janae, I remember she sent me a card. Let me pull this to make sure I look at this. You know what I mean? It just, 5 minutes of your time could be a lifetime opportunity for you.
Okay, I just wanted to let everybody know we've got probably about 20 minutes or so in the first general session. I just want to respect our presenters' time. Keep the questions coming. The question that this is directly probably towards Alex more, but everybody can chime in with if they like. What are your thoughts about family planning in this industry? And you don't have to answer any part if you're not comfortable with it. Were there some hesitations, etc.? What are your thoughts?
Well, I had gone back and forth. So I don't know if this is a female thing, if it's I'm an uptight as all get out kind of thing. I try to plan my life 10 years in advance, and you cannot do that in this industry. Like you can have goals and things you want to reach, but you just have to be able to go with the flow. And I had always been very open that one day I did want to have kids, I did want to have a family, but I also was not willing to give up on anything in my career. It's very important to me, and I still have a tremendous amount of goals in this industry I wanted to reach. And so I would go back and forth all the time, like, oh, do I want to wait later in life and be a mother later on, and just, once I'm more stable? And then it's like, okay, well, no, I don't. There's no good answer to that. It's all what you are capable of handling and your comfort level at the time. And it also very much depends on the staff that you're working for as well, and how open they are to that situation. So I feel like where I'm at right now, I'm extremely lucky to have a staff that respects me as a video director, and they respect me enough to know that I will not drop the ball on my job. I will get it done no matter what situation is thrown at me, and that includes pregnancy and morning sickness and birthing a child right before the season. So I would just say, you have to know your boundaries and your staff's boundaries, and balance those two. And for me, it's not like I'm going to still be able to do everything that I wanted to do. Like, sadly, I regret I wasn't on as many CSBA calls that I wanted to be this year. I wasn't as active as I would like to be in those things, but with quarantine and pregnancy and basically still a new coaching staff, you just have to prioritize things, and those priorities are going to have an ebb and flow to them. And so I'm at the point in my life where I'm like, okay, we can prioritize this, but that means we're going to have to drop this and this. And I think if you're willing to do that, and know your personal limits and limitations, that's how you can achieve that and get that done. I think the biggest thing that I could do right now to make it harder on myself is to not acknowledge that I have limitations. I think you have to know what your limits are and what you can handle them in the different time frames for that. And that's kind of gone into my, I guess you would call it family planning. We will see how it goes in season. I will update everybody. But I'm also lucky with a very supportive spouse who has moved across the country 5 times, has a job that is conducive to helping me raise a child, and for lack of better words, is comfortable outside of the social norms of what the household looks like. He will let me work my long hours and be, I don't know, the breadwinner and take care of the kids and things like that. So you also have to have that support within your staff and outside of your staff as well.
Can I answer a question from Mel's perspective? Let's see, in 2018, I'm not sure if anybody know here, my assistant, he runs our production department. His wife got pregnant and my wife got pregnant within a week of each other. We both were due in April, which is right smack dab in the middle of spring football. Now, during this time, myself and Blake, we were always available for the coaches because we had no children. Alex brought up a good point. That's the relationship you grow with your staff and understanding your boundaries and knowing what you could do when you want to start a family in this industry. So with that being said, Coach Franklin saw that, hey, I see both my video guys are kind of growing up, quote unquote, so they need an assistant. And that's how we got approved to have an assistant, was because we're now fathers and husbands, because we both got married and both had children. and we had children during spring ball, but we made it work to where his wife popped out on April 8th and my wife popped out on April 15th. So we was able to swing it a little bit. It didn't plan that way. It just happened that way. So it all depends on, like Alex said, just your relationship with your staff. And it was kind of cool to see how it all played out with our staff and our families growing.
I think it's also really important to realize that you are legally entitled to maternity leave to take care of your child, right? And Alex is laughing because I've told her this multiple times. It's like, you feel that need, you have to get back to work. My staff needs me. My staff needs me. But you are legally entitled. Your job will be there. You are protected. Don't forget that. That is, it's ingrained in us that we have to be at work. We have to shoot these games. But it's more important to take care and take that time, and you're legally entitled to that. So I know that that's something that I would struggle with if I chose to have a family, is that I got to be in the office, but I'm 17 hours post-birth. You have to it's different. You have to recognize that you're entitled to take that time, and it's more important to take that time. And I'm lecturing Alex silently right now, but it's more important to take that time than to worry about shooting that game, because your assistant's going to pick that slack up for you. And it's not slack, it's your life. It's what you're entitled to. My sister's over here clapping for me.
Men, we get it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know that till last year. One of our coaches took maternity leave when his wife had a baby, and we was like, huh? So
Yeah.
it was just weird. And I don't know. I didn't know till last year. I never took it.
At Kansas, we have a great maternity leave package. Because just governmentally, this is getting way into it, but federal government, you're entitled to leave, but every athletic department will have a different one for paid leave as well. And Kansas has one of the best ones. Unfortunately, I timed my pregnancy really great at the start of the season. So as Darby's alluding to, I am still personally struggling with the balance of how much time will I want to take when that occurs. And that's another one of those things where I'm going to just every day have to talk to myself through, okay, what are my priorities and what are my limits and what am I willing to sacrifice? And to be honest, that's still something as I'm getting further along in my pregnancy that I'm figuring out as I go.
I think male or female, it's also going to depend. You really have to, I'd say, have a spouse that's very understanding, like Alex has, or like Jevin and them have, that understands the work hours. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. You just have to be able to communicate with that. And especially, in relationships, letting someone know if this is the job that you want to do for forever, these are my hours. This is what it looks like. I work 7 days a week from August till December or January, depending if, you're on a championship team or whatever else. But you just have to, have that comfort and, that support is going to be the big thing. I would say that I haven't dated a lot of people because they don't get that. They don't understand the football life. They don't understand the moving, any of that. So it's really just, you have to be on the same page with the partner.
And not just for family planning, but it's a special person as a male. I'm sorry, all you males that are on this call, I'm judging you right now. To be confident enough to date a woman that is surrounded by alpha males 24/7. I am surrounded by coaches and the most athletic people on this earth. And, they're just confident males that you are surrounded with every day, and you're spending more time with them than you will with your significant other. That's just part of it. In the season, my iPhone gets confused between what my work and my home is. You are going to be around those people more than you are going to be around your significant other. And they need to have the quiet confidence to respect that and be okay with that.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of, you're around tons of males every day, why are you not dating them? Well, because I work with them, for one. That's a professional thing. You have to make it clear, just because I'm around men all day and I'm one of the females in the office doesn't mean that I'm getting hit on 24/7 or that they're interested in me or I'm even interested in them, because that's really, a whole other thing too. But yeah, you have to your significant other is going to have to be comfortable as a female being in a male dominant job.
And coaches most coaches have no personal boundaries. When they need something, they will call you. They don't care what time of day it is. So also understanding that you are on call more than the average person, and that you know, you are a support staff member, and that's just part of it.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, I feel like I've had to go out of my way to make coaches and support staff members' wives comfortable with me being around their husbands all the time. So like I've had to go out of my way to introduce myself and to them and make sure that they know who I am. You know what I mean? I'm not just that girl in the office. Like they need to put a face and a job to that name. So I felt like that's probably not something that a lot of guys in our industry ever worry about. But I definitely have had issues with coaches' wives or support staff wives because, like Alex said, we're spending more time with them than they are with their significant others. So you have to kind of go out of your way to almost, it's okay, ease it over. You know what I mean? I don't know how to explain it, but I know a lot of the females in this room know exactly what I'm talking about. There's no need for jealousy, but there's also no need to make it a stressful situation for them or for your significant other either. Lay it out on the table, make sure everybody knows everybody, and like Alex said, lay out, like, and Leigha said, you work 7 days a week, you're taking calls late. It's 99% gonna be from a guy, you know what I mean? But it shouldn't be any different than Joshua taking a call from a guy coach at 11:30 at night, because it's not, you know what I mean? But you kind of have to find that person that is okay with that.
Yeah. And even talking about, like Darby said, just the wives and everything else like that. And we mentioned it earlier. We didn't really go broad on it, but you know, you're going to be left out of certain situations too, because you are a female. They're going to have Super Bowl nights where it's them and their girlfriends and all the staff's invited, you know, QCs, all these people, but you're not. And that's just how it is, you know. If you're a single female, you know, if you have a family and stuff, I'm sure that's going to make them feel a lot more comfortable, you know, probably in certain situations, because it's not, oh, well, we're bringing our single female coworker that's around us all the time, you know, whatever. But yeah, you know, I got lucky enough. We have some not young coaches on staff, but we have some younger coaches on staff, and I've made a friendship with at least one of the wives enough that now I get invited sometimes to go out with, you know, a few of them when they go out with, you know, with the wives or whatever. Actually, we take the wife out with us and then they'll meet up with us later, you know. Sometimes you get lucky and you find out on staff, this is the first one I've been on like that, and this is my 4th or 5th school I've been at. But just don't take it personal. You cannot take it personal. It's just going to be how it goes sometimes. Don't let that get to you, I would say.
With the time that we have going, we'll probably have time for 2 more questions in the general session, and then we'll end the general session. But does any brave soul want to ask an in-person question before I go to the last chat questions? Anybody brave?
And I got a question and a comment. It was kind of refreshing to hear you ladies say, because, you know, I have female students on my staff, and it was kind of refreshing to hear you say it's difficult to have the question about what to wear to practice. You know, as you know, ladies, you do feel comfortable to wear the leggings, but then it's unacceptable at our school, you know, so it's always hard to have that. And it was refreshing for me, because I go back and forth and I'm always asking everyone in my office, like, how do I have that conversation? And to hear you ladies say, Alex and Darby said, hey, you guys went back and forth with it, and you're like, it's difficult. There's no right way of having it. So that's kind of refreshing to me as a director and a leader of a department, to say that I feel good about myself now. It's not easy. And then my question was, from you ladies' position, from a, you know, including you, Dory, when you were at Hawaii, like, I know what we do to provide on recruiting weekends and game day and whatever. How do you guys navigate around your facility and around the team, the locker room, and get your jobs done at a high level when you're quote unquote restricted in certain areas during certain times? How do y'all do your jobs effectively during the most intense times, being the opposite sex on an important event or day?
I have to be honest, I don't think I've ever felt like being a female has prohibited me from getting my job done on game day. The only time, and the only place that I feel like I can't go is obviously the locker room when they're changing, right? We get there, we'll play the pregame highlight tape in the locker room, and I'll be in there when they play the highlight tape, and as soon as it fades to black, I'm out of there because they start changing clothes. But the fact of the matter is I don't need to be in the locker room to get my job done. And that's really the only place that I feel like that I can't go. And one of the other things that a lot of people don't think about is changing on game days. And so I negate that by just changing and wearing my game day clothes at the hotel before I leave. I know a lot of teams you have to dress up before you go. And I just went to my coach, it's plain and simple, like I'm not being provided a place to change other than a public restroom. Therefore, I am going to wear my game day clothes on the bus to the game. And that's one of those conversations you just have to sit down and have. And if that's not okay with them, then they need to provide you a comparable place for you to change as a guy does. But honestly, and maybe it might be different for the other ones, but I don't feel like I've ever not been able to do my job because of a location that I can't get to.
No, I feel like kind of like you. We do a pregame highlight in the locker room. In fact, when we're home, our locker room is one of our meeting rooms because our facility is kind of a little bit smaller. So I'd say just being cautious when you're going into those situations. I don't ever just go down to the locker room if someone says there's an issue. I make sure I bang on the door. Luckily, the locker room doesn't just open up straight into the locker room. There's a wall there. So I always yell and make sure everyone's decent. Everyone knows I'm a female. I'm coming in. Make sure you're covered, whatever else. If someone says, no, we're not, then I'm not coming in. You're going to have to handle your business before I come in there because you guys need my help and I'm just trying to do my job. During our days, we don't do our video until right before they literally leave the locker room to go out into the field to play the game. So luckily the guys go in. I don't even go in at first. They all get dressed. They leave to do all of their, pregame stuff on the field. So I make sure no one's in there. None of our guys who don't dress out in there changing for some reason. Usually I have a DFO or one of our other QCs or somebody in there who's not doing something that walks through the locker room, says it's clear. I come in, I set it up. In fact, they bring recruits through our locker room with their moms and stuff before the guys come back in. So luckily, it's not as uncomfortable. We have tons of people in that locker room and then they're ushered out. Our guys come in, we watch the video. I shut it down just like, Darby, I'm out of there before even half of them are, and it's done. I don't think we really have too many issues about, not being able to go anywhere. I do the same thing. I change game day clothes on game day because, usually you're going to be on the staff bus anyway, so people who are already in their game day stuff, trainers, people like that, SIDs, whoever else. So everyone's going to be in khaki and polos. At least that's how most of the places I've been, even if they have to dress up, most of that staff is going to be still already in their game day stuff. So luckily it hasn't been too difficult to get around any of those days or stuff like that.
I feel like it's all about communication. Like as what you're seeing from Darby and Leah's examples is, okay, yeah, you would think the locker room would be a difficult place for us to navigate, but if you work well with your staff and your DFO and your head coach, you can see there's times in the schedule to work out where it's actually not that big of a deal to get where you need to go. And you mentioned recruiting weekends, like it's the same thing. It's not just me as a female on my staff, but our 2 on-campus directors are female as well. And so we just have to be careful about the workout schedule of our current guys because they're in there before our recruiting weekends. So as long as we communicate with the DFO, the strength staff, know who's going to be in there when, and are prepared ahead of time, we can find those windows where it won't really hinder us from doing our job. So I think for us, we're all three are big pre-planners and communicators. And so that kind of eliminated that as a challenge that you might think would happen. And also I had a male assistant this year. So like if something went down in the locker room, during practice that had to get fixed immediately, he could go in, but I would say that happened maybe once or twice. And those are just the boards. So it wouldn't have been the end of the world if they weren't working anyways. You could have waited for them to go out to practice and find another opportunity to fix it.
Okay, one last in-person question, and I'm anticipating one because she messaged me.
Hi guys, I'm Taylor. I'm a graduate from Buffalo. I worked under Jimmy and now I'm a production assistant for the Salem Red Sox minor league team for baseball. From a more technical side, I just wanted your guys' inputs of, what you're looking for in new and recent grads or new hirees in terms of like production experience or software in terms of like Avid, Premiere, Final Cut, what you guys are looking for in terms of like technical stuff.
I think, I don't know. I probably Premiere is more widely used than Avid. That I'm not the best post-production person, so I don't know for sure, but I feel like Premiere is going to be more widely used than Avid. For me, it's just about being, one, your resume has to be put together, right? Because that's your first thing. So if your resume doesn't stand out from somebody else's, you're automatically off the pile. So it's crazy to think that you literally have 60 to 90 seconds to catch an employer's eye, and that decision's made. So one, your resume has to be 100% spot on. Even one grammatical error, I'm like, I don't know, this person's attention to detail is not the best. You know what I mean? So you need to be spot on with your resume first and foremost. And then as far as production, have a really, really good demo reel, right? Like that's a website. I found that was actually one of the biggest things when I was hired a production guy this past year. Was it was so much easier and better for me to go to a website that they put time in building, and instead of them just sending me links to videos, right? So have a web page, because to me that looks like, hey, she went above and beyond and put time and her own money into building a web page that is her video reel. So I think that will definitely go a long way as well.
Yeah, I would agree. Just like offhand, I would say Premiere. I know that's the more common one, and I think working in college through universities, it's probably easier for them to get those Adobe packages. So it's going to be more likely that that's what your university is going to expect you to work off of. So do your research ahead of time on where you're applying and their resources and their expectations to kind of know what platforms they're expecting you to have knowledge of. I don't oversee creative here at Kansas. But I would say if I were to go back to have to hiring that position like that, I would place more emphasis on your reel and website, like Darby is saying, than I would the actual Premiere or Avid, because I want to see what you can produce, and I want to see how much effort and attention to detail and effects that you put into those videos and the quality of your work, because from experience, I know those videos take a lot of dedication and time, and I would place more emphasis on somebody with the personality who's willing to put that time and effort into developing the final product.
And if you can, try to find footage of the team that you're interviewing for and cut together something that of their stuff. You know what I mean? It's always easier to visualize what that person can do for you when they're doing it with the actual footage that you would be using. So if you can get your hands on it, grab it and put together something. And that also shows personalization. Like you went above and beyond. Like I know if you're applying for Northwestern, you're not going to give me a Michigan highlight, but if you give me a Northwestern highlight, I'm like, oh, well, she actually personalized this, went through the effort to make it for Northwestern, which showing me you're already going above and beyond somebody else. You've got the passion, you've got the want to, and that's half the battle right there.
That's a great
I have
idea.
a comment.
Yep.
I have a quick comment. I had a couple people that would come and do projects for us, highlights or other stadium intros or other creative pieces that we needed. And one guy worked for Sports Info, and another guy just showed up and wanted to basically have a place to get footage for himself, and then he would make little things for us. And the second guy did a great job. But he was kind of problematic to work with because he wanted to do everything his way, and we were trying to get him to follow our lead or direction or instruction. So that's another thing too is, yeah, you may have a vision of how you like doing videos, but really, like, how can you accommodate your staff, or how can you tailor your skills to meet the needs of your team? And I mean, you can make all the side videos you want, but can you get that video done on time? Oh, I'm still working on it, I'm not quite sure. Well, that doesn't cut it when coach is MFing me, asking, and I have to ask you, where's the video? So being able to get a project done on time is important, as well as staying on task.
Yeah.
That's just as important as you're being able to use the whatever tools.
That was the hardest part, Dory, for me to learn, especially my first year when I was doing it at Northwestern, is like there's a balance between quality and getting it like done within less than a week. And you have to be willing to accept the feedback and criticism of the coach. So I know, like, I poured my heart into this video or whatever, and you're so emotionally attached to it because you're spending hours on it in such a short time frame. But you have to realize that, you know, what its end purpose and goal is, and be willing to tailor it toward that. And that is really hard, I feel like, for creative people, because to be good at your job, you do get emotionally attached to your work, and that's nothing to fault, but you have to have the, I guess, the confidence and the thick skin to be able to take criticism. And this coach may not like the song you picked and everything is cut to that beat. Well, crap, here we go. You know,
or your boss told you it was okay to use songs with curse words and you cut it all together, and then the head coach tells you it's not.
And you have less than 24 hours to edit it.
Sorry about that still.
Yeah, I'd say definitely knowing what the vision is of that program, that coach. It's going to be a big thing. Like they said, you can't take it personal. And it's going to be hard not to take it personal, because like they said, it's a personal thing when you make creative things. Creative is way different than just putting together a cut up of QB drills, you know, that's way different. But you gotta be prepared for people to not like what you give them, even when it's good. Because that vision might not have been their vision. Even if they told you this was their vision, they're like, oh no, but I saw it doing this instead of that. I had a coach, again, do that to me, kind of like Alex was talking about, and I had 24 hours, and I had one of my GAs who liked to do videos too have to help me out with it, because I was so distraught that I had put so much time, and now it's 24 hours before we leave, and he wants a completely different video than what I had just given him, and I'd worked on it all week. And you just have to have that tenacity to, like, go back in, scrap it, and do it over and find out what they really want. So just really listen when people are asking you. Also be prepared if you are doing production things or doing highlights and that's what they're hiring you for. Someone might get on an interview with you and then they might say, well, we want to see what you can do. And they might send you film and make you make a highlight. I had someone do that to me in an interview process for a job, and they sent me their highlights that had been pre-cut up, and I had to take those cut up highlights and make a whole new highlight. And they wanted to see how fast I could do it. So challenged myself, and that same day that they gave it to me, I'd send it right back within that same night. So you just really got to, like, have that gutso and that want to, and really be driven to expect the unexpected and really produce something. And just always stand behind what you do. Like, you don't have to argue with it or whatever, but just, you know, stand behind your work.
And each staff is going to be different. Like at Northwestern, when I was doing highlights there, like once Coach Fitz saw the first one, he knew I wasn't going to completely ruin his program. He gave me a little more creative freedom and didn't really check in or micromanage me. But when I was at Eastern Michigan, the head coach there, like, that was his baby. Like, he loved it. And so you just have to know some of those coaches are going to be hands-on, and they're going to want you to do something that you know is not going to look as good creatively, or okay, for other example, Coach Hank loves Michael Jordan. Okay, these kids have seen Michael Jordan 3 times. They may not be as into it, but you have to know who you're making the video for, who the audience is, and respect that, you know, some coaches are going to be more hands-on and micromanage you a little more and have their vision that they want. And ultimately that's who you're catering to, and that's who you're making the video for.
Yeah, same. I've had coaches that they watch every video before they ever let the team watch it. But at Towson, I make all of our, well, the first year I didn't. We have another production department, but he has so much on his plate. I was like, hey, I'll do football. I can do it. And my coach doesn't watch any of my highlights before I play them. It's just a trust thing too. I mean, he just mostly knows that we're not going to put out anything terrible. It's in our locker room. It's not going out on social media anyway, so the music doesn't matter. As long as the guys are happy, he's happy. So, yeah, it's going to be different between each staff, whether they are really hands-on with your work or they're not.
And I would also say, do whatever you can to not burn out. I think production, if you're strictly production, that's one of the things one of the positions I see burn out the quickest in football, because creative people aren't made to fit in a box. And football is a nice square box with 90-degree angles every time, right? So you're constantly stuck in this box of what you have to produce. So you have to intrinsically know and figure out how to not get burnout to succeed and to stay in football in production.
And it's so hard to come up with a new idea every week. Like when you're making, and I know some of these staffs are making, like I hear people making a defensive highlight and then a team highlight, and then I'm also in charge of social, and you have 1 week and you're looking at the same clips from the same game and trying to do something completely different with them to make 3 different videos. And then you multiply that by 12 for 12 weeks. Like, how can I even find that many songs that are worth a damn? You know, like it is a very hard job and it is very underrated. So you just have to know that going into it and be as prepared ahead of time as possible. Like I don't even do production anymore, and I have a playlist on my Spotify account in case I ever do of songs that pop up and I'm like, oh, that'd be good for a video. Like, oh, that, you know, stay on top of it and let your everyday life inspire you, because otherwise you're going to run out of ideas 6 weeks into the season.
And I think you can also make yourself even more valuable if you have the time and the ability to also do graphics on top of video.
Yes.
Neither of which I can do, so don't ask me for any advice.
Well, we went a little bit over, but I mean, everything was so good that, I mean, we could go on for hours and hours, but I want to respect the presenter's time. I thought it was unbelievable. I'm sure everybody on the screen can agree. This is the part where we all drop our contact info, whatever you're comfortable with. Please express your gratitude towards our presenters. I think they did an incredible job. And I'm sure that this will be the first or not the last panel that we see these guys on. And I just wanted to extend one more particular thank you to all those that ask questions and whatnot, because I know it can be really hard and it could be intimidating in front of these, esteemed guests. But hopefully you guys realize that, we're all people at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what gender, creed, race, religion. We're all looking to accomplish the same thing. And I hope that this session did just a little bit of that to break down those barriers. And I'm going to stay a little bit after for the debriefing, just because I felt like I was more of a participant than anything. But the presenters and anybody, they're free to go now. Thank you. I appreciate the time, everybody. That was awesome. Thank you.
Hey, and real quick, everyone, I dropped my email and my cell phone number in there. I want every lady on this call to send me her contact information, because one of the reasons why I stepped back from CSVA is and I'm publicly announcing this, so I'm making this a goal now, is I want to create some sort of, and I don't know how I'm going to go about this yet, so it's in its infancy stage, but I want to create some sort of network for females in football video, right? So, and you guys are a large part of that, everybody on this screen. So please, please, please take the time to shoot me your contact information. So when I do finally get these gears rolling and figure out exactly what I want to do, or maybe you guys can help me with that, I have a core group that we can get started with and start building from there. So please drop me your info.
It really doesn't get easier than that. What
Right.
for connection, it really doesn't get easier than that. If you don't do that, sorry, like I'm gonna question your intelligence. That's really just like, that's the easiest it could possibly get. Like, we had to go to conferences, like I had to shake hands with everybody. Like, that's as easy as you could possibly get. Okay. So,
And
I have the CSVA gals group on Facebook that I can make you an admin for if you want to at least get started with that. I already made a group a while ago.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, no, that would be good. And I probably am speaking for Alex and Leigha when I say this, like, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Don't be intimidated. If you have a question that didn't get answered today, or you think of something later tonight, or you want our opinion on something, I don't care if it's 6 months from now, 3 years from now, please, please, please feel free to reach out to us. Use us as resources, because I wish that I had those resources when I was your age. I feel like your grandma's saying your age, by the way.
And with that,
Grandma.
you're free to go. You're free to go unless anybody has anything to say. I'm going to stay for the debriefing. I would just like to just talk to people. None of this is just going to, be recorded, like be cut up after. But I'll be here to answer questions, debrief on everything that's been said. I know I have a ton of my female students in here that might want to talk things over. So go ahead and stay if you like, but everybody's free to go officially. So
Awesome. Thank you, Jimmy.
you're welcome. Thank you all. Thank y'all. Hope your family stays safe.